Okay, folks, welcome back to Press for Truth TV. Thanks for joining me once again. Today is Friday, January 27th, 2012, and we have a very special show lined up for you today. We're going to be speaking with the one and only Jason Bermas. And if you're involved in the truth movement and you don't know who Jason Bermas is, well, really, I don't really see how that is possible. You'd have to be living under a rock. Jason, of course, was involved with the making of Loose Change, one of the internet's largest films of all time, I would say still is, and probably the internet's first blockbuster hit. It's been seen by literally over 100 million people, so it's really affected culture and, in my opinion, kind of changed the world. I think a lot of people who are involved in the truth movement woke up because of 9/11, and certainly that film had something to do with it. And of course, Jason went on to produce and direct his own films like Fabled Enemies and Invisible Empire. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us here at Press for Truth TV.
Well, thank you so much for having me, man. And I'm also a big fan of your work. And we've spoken through the years, through the internet. And it's really good to talk to you in person because you've done really so much for the movement, and especially our neighbor to the north, where people can see this isn't just about the United States of America. This really is about a global empire, and it's taking place in places like Canada, in Mexico, in South America, across the world, in Europe. And people that are paying attention understand that. But, people that are new to it often dismiss the idea because, oh, you're just mad at America. Well, it's really not about America.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, and I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot coming from you. So why don't you tell, for the viewers here, just explain a little bit about how you got involved in the movement and some of the things that transpired for you over the years to bring you to where you're at today.
Sure. At this point, we're in 2012 right now. It's been a pretty long journey. I'm 32 years old, man. I'm an old man by now in this whole thing, and really it was in 2001 after the attacks of 9/11. Initially, I remember being kind of shocked, having a couple questions, but at the same time of having those questions, we were really being ramrodded by the media, the idea that these people were here to get us. I live in New York, I'm only a couple hours away. I grew up, and we used to go down to Brooklyn, Flatbush all the time to visit my great aunt. You go by the World Trade Center. I'd been inside the buildings. They were really these epic monuments. Anywhere you were in the city, forget about the skyline. Like when you were right up against them, it was like total vertigo. So city within a city almost to me doesn't even describe them. They were like these icons. Okay. So with that to happen and all the death and carnage, it really left an emotional scar on me, I guess you could say. And from there, I bought into the propaganda. I was one of those guys that was like, let's go get those bastards. Let's kill bin Laden. This is disgusting. But then after Afghanistan, and we could see that we were going into the war with Iraq, for instance, I started to ask a little bit more questions. Now, this is much further than 2003. We're talking right afterwards, because only a month after Afghanistan, you really saw that they were poisoning themselves to go somewhere else in the Middle East, and Iraq was really in their sight. So you start questioning the government then, and I remember seeing a Fox and Friends clip about Lepentagate and Theory Masson, and I remember thinking to myself, these French bastards will say anything. I'm all pissed off, And again, I bought into Fox's propaganda. I was eating up 24-hour news, not only from Fox but MSNBC and CNN, like never before. So I think that I'm informed. All right. However, then you start coming across some other things. You start coming across the fact that, well, yeah, bin Laden did work for the CIA in the 70s against the Soviets. That is pretty interesting. And what really threw me over the top, and I know people have heard this before, but those who haven't, what really threw me over the top was being at a men's night basketball game at my old high school where some of my friends had actually become teachers, and some of my old teachers were there. And I went back into the locker room where I used to suit up for basketball and soccer and baseball, and this is a school, very small. I only graduated with like 50 kids. 12 years old to 18, middle school and high school, so very impressionable. And I went to take a piss, and I'm pissing on bin Laden's face, and it says Operation Enduring Freedom. and just something really just was like, whoa, man, whoa. I'm like, that is pretty intense. I mean, you're literally pissing on another man's face visually, and not only joking about it but reveling in it. Okay, so that was it for me. I was like, I better find out if this is justified, if this guy did it, because I lived through the era here, at least, where we were fighting the Russians and we could have nuclear war, and we still did duck and cover when I was in school. I remember those things. Those are the kind of things you remember. You may not remember the color of your teacher's hair, but you remember getting under a desk and getting in a hallway and balling up because the Russians were going to get us. And you remember when they showed you these horrific Hollywood movies of, like, what is it, The Last Day or something like that. You remember that stuff. And I went home and I Googled the term 9/11 timeline. I wanted a full synopsis of just that day. I just wanted 24 hours. I came across this thing called 911timeline.net. That's 911timeline.net, and that's not the Paul Thompson timeline by any means. It was this 40-page synopsis, 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., all these anomalies. I did not want to believe it. And really, that's where I just tumbled down the rabbit hole. As I found out more and more, I got more and more upset. Really fell into the filmmaking aspect of it. I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. In fact, at the time of me falling into filmmaking, I was in a print shop, in a design shop, and it's just been a roller coaster ride ever since, I guess, Dan.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been similar in my situation. I just kind of fell into filmmaking and just sort of went with it and kept working on it, and eventually just got into making films, and that's just kind of how it went for me. And it looks like it went a little bit similar for you. And then this ended up bringing you all kinds of interesting opportunities. One that I'm intrigued about, and I'd love to hear just a little bit of your experiences of what it was like for when you were approached by Alex to pack up your life and move on down to Texas for a whole year, and to work with them, co-host his show, host your own show, The Info Warrior, and produce and direct an all-out documentary down there. What was that like, to just pack up your whole life and go from New York to Texas, which must have been a bit of a culture shock? That must have been one heck of an experience.
Well, I mean, it's twofold, man, because, like, let's look at it this way. I'd already been traveling a lot, okay? So I'd already been in New York, but I'd already spent some time living out in Los Angeles for like 6 weeks and flying out there, twice a month, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. I'd already been, I mean, we went everywhere from Colorado to Miami. We drove across the country. So for me, it wasn't really a big deal to pack up everything and go, because even before that, I had flown out there for 3 months and done Fabled Enemies with InfoWars as well. And, that's where I first started to host his show when he wasn't in. He gave me that opportunity. And before that, really, I'd have shows on several other networks, Revere Radio being the first one. I did Louder Than Words Radio with Dylan Avery. I didn't even have this kind of equipment, man. I didn't have a 720p HD webcam. It's amazing technology. I mean, that's back in 2005, only 7 years ago. I'm sitting here on a real dynamic mic. We're 1,000 plus miles away right now, probably.
Yeah, easily. Yep.
Yeah, easily. And we're having this conversation. It's amazing how things move. And I've just been so lucky, I think. And that was a really great time. So when I first got there, you got to understand, Alex also produced Loose Change Final Cut. So at that time, I was a guest on his show. We talked, we'd met in Chicago for the first time. Obviously, I admired Alex a lot prior to this, because he's really who helped me fall down the rabbit hole outside of 9/11 and really define that 9/11 had this bigger agenda around it. And to this day, I still admire Alex. He continues to grow. He continues to do great things. And InfoWars is really, truly the one independent news source that day in and day out, whether you agree with everything that's posted or not, is putting real information, important information to the masses that's now really been, and this is how it works, multiplied, not doubled, not tripled. You really can't quantify, because you don't know how much, by a guy like Drudge. And now other people are picking it up. So kudos to what he's done. When I was down there, I mean, it's kind of like a kid in a candy store, I guess. On one level, because, I'm working my butt off over there too. You got to understand, it's long hours. I'm living 20 miles outside of Austin. I still got 3 pit bulls to this day. I got one lying behind me right now. I got one in the next room, another one in the living room. So at this time, I'm on a farm. I've got to commute all the time, but it's awesome. Are you kidding me? I love that opportunity. I thought it was amazing. I can't look on that time much fonder too, because the people that work there, especially in the heart of the operation, they're real people, man. You know, a lot of people like to attack that operation, and it kind of makes me sick because I have been on the inside and I do know how it works. And I know that Alex is the same on the air as he is off the air. He's a really genuine person. You know, he's a human being like any of us. Nobody's perfect, obviously. But when you're held to that standard and you have this level of success, people are on the attack constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, people behind the scenes and really somewhere outwardly, you know, Rob Dew's been in there for years now. Couldn't be a better, hardworking, greater guy, very talented guy. A guy like Aaron Dykes. I mean, people, if you don't know Aaron Dykes, although on the forefront sometimes, behind the scenes, Aaron Dykes is the hardest working man in real business. Forget about show business.
Yeah.
This guy